I just imagine that there's an equal amount of attention put on Anson Mount's hair, because it's just like this like pit crew where everybody's just like spritzing and curling and putting all these different things in there just to make sure it's on point, and I promise you it is on point at all times.
He's the only guy I've seen that has streaks in silver hair.
It is so cool. It is such a cool look.
Like he's got gray hair, but it's got streaks in it.
Yeah, it's like gray hair like in reverse, because it's like instead of like you were saying it's streaked, but it's like it's gray hair streaked with black in it. It's like so for Halloween last year, I got myself a yellow sweater and got myself a gold pin and a can of silver stuff. Put my hair up as high as I could, and showed up as Captain Pike. It was pretty cool, actually. Folks were pretty impressed with it. It is funny though at my workplace because it's full of casuals. Like, I mean, I have friends that I can talk Marvel and DC and comic stuff and all that, but like, only a couple people are into Trek. Most everybody isn't. So it's like, oh, hey, so you're Mr. Spock, right? No.
Dr. Spock, yeah.
Exactly. It's a lot of that. And one guy got it close. One of our sales guys, he's like, Captain Kirk, right? And it's like, well, I mean,
I could see that. That's,
I mean, it's the same color shirt.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
Well, and it's kind of interesting because, like, especially with me, because like the change isn't that drastic. Like, I shaved my beard and, I put my hair up and put a little extra spray in it. And really, if you look, I can't believe we're spending this much time talking about it before we get going. But if you look at like a 360 panorama, it's predominantly gray up front but still dark in the back.
He's got like the Jay Leno thing going on.
Yeah, very much so.
Leno had like white hair. And then he had a black for ages and ages. Then he had like this black spot right at the front, and then all the back of his head was black.
Exactly.
Like, in those, like, I mean, now he's all white hair, but he's old now. Like, I'm talking when it was the Leno Letterman, every night.
Oh yeah, like in the 90s,
late 90s kind of thing. Yeah. It's like Leno had. That's what it said. So I know someone. Who was it? Someone went on his show, some comedian, and was like, "You're the strangest." He goes, "I mean this with all due respect," but he's like, "You're the strangest looking human being on the planet." He's like, "You're not like." He goes, "I don't mean to." He's like, "I'm not saying you're bad looking. It's just you just." Yeah, he's like, you got black hair at the front and the back, and then all the rest of it's white. Yeah, the chin and the big head. Just
Well, it turns out he's just a Transformers animated character.
Yeah.
The Steel Cage. He's the co-creator and the co-writer of Transformers Reanimated, and he's beaten the skins for 7-day weekend. It is the one and only Captain Boomerang, Greig Tansley. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you. I'm back. We're ready to go where we've been so many times before.
It feels that way. I mean, because really, when we talked about Picard Season 3, it seems like at least a third of that conversation was Strange New Worlds adjacent, because like we had kind of talked about, kind of what our hopes and dreams were for the then upcoming season, and kind of reflecting on the season that was, and kind of comparing and contrasting with Picard, and then really kind of like the state of the union of Star Trek as regard to what's happening on Paramount Plus with kind of the multifaceted universe they've created that doesn't exist on broadcast television between Star Trek Discovery, Lower Decks, Picard, and Strange New Worlds, which still blows me away. It is fascinating to me that there is a thriving Star Trek content machine that doesn't exist on traditional television. I just find that very, very weird.
Because even, I mean, it's different here. Obviously, we just got whatever you guys, well, we got our free years ago when Star Trek was on TV, like Next Gen and Deep Space Nine and Voyager. They would be on like free-to-air TV here, but obviously they were just, our channels didn't marry to yours. There were mixes and matches, you know what I mean?
Right.
But I think from hearing it then that, I don't know if it was Voyager or Deep Space Nine, but one of them launched a channel over there, from what I understand. Like
it was UPN, the United Paramount Network, and that's right. Kind of what they used to springboard Voyager.
Yep.
Paramount launched an entire network based on like this unnetworked syndicated programming. Very odd, and basically, if I remember the chronology here in America, basically UPN merged with the WB, which was the network that launched like Smallville and other like Warner Brothers adjacent stuff. And then that's what has become the CW as we know now, home of like the Arrowverse and no shortage of like teen angst type of stuff. So that's, I think that's the loose chronology for us.
So like when Next Gen came out, where was that? Was that just on network TV, or
that was on syndicated television? So basically, like here, where I live, I believe it was on our local Fox affiliate.
So that's not cable.
No,
see, no, that we had
it was still free TV.
We had free to air TV until about 94, 95, and then there was cable, and now there's free to air, there's cable, and there's streaming services. Got it. Yeah, syndicated, we don't sort of have that.
Got it.
And from what I understand, I've never really had that. Just we would just have repeats of stuff all the time. You know, like, oh, let's Get Smart again. You know, like it's what's on at 5:30 before the news. MASH. It's just, you know, stuff like that.
Gotcha.
But yeah, no one. Then once cable came out, it was just like, and now I don't even watch anything on free to air now.
Oh, really? So it's all
just
streaming
local content, and all the local stuff is used to always be cop shows and doctor shows. That was pretty much what we would do all the time. And like soap operas, so obviously Neighbours, Home and Away, that stuff.
Sure. Yeah.
And then now it's all just like reality. So like we have our version of The Bachelor, and there's a show called The Block, which I don't know if that's a thing over there. It's like a home renovation. Like,
oh, sure.
There'll be a block of units or a block of apartments or whatever you call them. And a couple has one each, and you got to renovate it into your dream house, and then they auction them off at the end. So,
oh, interesting.
But it's been going forever. But I watched it when it first started, but I mean, it's been going for like over a decade now. So,
yeah,
and it just seems to be nonstop. So it'd be like Survivor. It was just like, again, like we just had Survivor. Now it's like season 700. It's like starting in 2 weeks. It's like we just finished the last one. So I haven't watched the American Survivor for years now.
Well, I was going to say, is Australian Survivor still going down there?
It was on this year. I don't know if it's coming back or not, but it's been on for the last 5 or 6 years, I think. So, but it's like once a year, and that's it. So
right. Like which is kind of the way it should,
whatever, and then that's it.
Yeah, and that way you appreciate it. It was interesting. So here in the U.S., Paramount Plus are the stream. See, it's still topical because it's all Paramount. But like, Paramount Plus was running Australian Survivor for a brief time, and my wife and I got through like 2 seasons of it before they ended up cutting it. And I think it was just like rebroadcast rights or something like that. But like, we really enjoyed it. Like, I mean, like we were into Survivor when it first started and eventually got bored. We still watch the American one, but it feels like it's one of those things more out of obligation than like actual enjoyment. It's like, you know, a lot of folks that watched Walking Dead until the end, that kind of thing. That's kind of where we're at with American Survivor. But we were really taken by Australian Survivor because the competition is fierce and the gameplay is intense, and it reminded me of like when American Survivor first started. It's just like, yeah, let's get some real players in here. Let's get some real contenders in here, and it was really refreshing. We really liked it.
And the Australian one as well, like they're probably absolutely nobody to you guys, but there's every now and then there's a few sort of like mini celebrities on the show as well. Every now and then, like there'll be an ex-football player or an ex this or that. Like, you guys know that is like, so
yeah,
they're not all complete just man off the street kind of thing. Like some of them are like, I know that is, you know. So and like ex-Olympic athletes and things like that. So So sometimes now you get a bit of a mixture of like, oh yeah, cool. So I think that helps too, because it's like you kind of already know them, like, you know what I mean? So
yeah.
You know, like, oh, I'll go for that guy. He played for the football team that I support or whatever. You know, like, oh, yeah, you know, and then like, oh, he's a dick. You know,
it's like, oh, he earned that reputation. It's like, and that reputation precedes him. You know, that kind of thing. No, that's really cool. But yeah, really bummed that that they took that down in the U.S. and there's been no rebroadcast here in the States, which is a bummer because I mean, like I said, we really enjoyed it. Maybe I need to get a VPN and figure out how to masquerade as an Australian or something like that. But keeping it within the realm of Paramount streaming services. See, I almost curved that back with without incident. So Strange New Worlds, we're going into season 2. And before we kind of get into the nitty gritty of touching on like each individual episode, and I know from our group text there's going to be a couple things we're gonna lightly barb each other about, and I'm especially excited about that because my friend Greg is very pedantic, if you will, about uniforms. I see it seems to be his
stripes. Yeah,
it seems to be his pet issue. It's like every episode he's like, still the wrong uniform.
That's right. Wrong color.
Exactly. But before
wrong color,
we get
too many stripes.
Now I just need to see like cartoon Greg with like his arms folded and just that's what like the speech bubble would be. Wrong color, too many stripes.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
There's no truth to this art.
Exactly. But before we start litigating that, kind of take us back in time a little bit, because I know for your Star Trek fandom, it's very much rooted in the TOS era. And now we know what the TOS era is, but we'll get to that in due course. But so we talked about
those
this
old scientists, isn't it? That's what it stands for.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. And I gave it up too soon because like that was one of the moments that just made me cackle. Like, I mean, just like Robert De Niro in Cape Fear. I was just like, I mean, I'm like that. I just thought it was very clever writing, but we'll get to that. Kind of catch us up a little bit about kind of like, in brief, what your impressions of season 1 were, and kind of what your expectations for season 2 were going in, to just kind of lay the groundwork of just kind of how we felt about Strange New Worlds as a concept before we start deconstructing season 2 here.
Yep. Well, I'll start with just quickly. I'll start with Discovery, because I know Discovery is very kind of polarizing, I guess. with Star Trek.
Much like the whole plating on the NX-01.
Yeah, that's right. People seem to really love it or absolutely hate it. And I have found that you can typically judge a person's level of fandom, or not fandom as in like, oh, you're more of a fan than that person is, because like that's not only the whole gatekeeping thing, but like the whole like the level of fandom in the sense of like you've watched all the Star Treks, you know what I mean? Right. Or I saw the one with the whales, you know, like, and neither is better than the other. It's just what you've seen, but you can tell. I find that the people that have watched all the Star Trek stuff tended to lean away from Discovery more than the people who were just like, what's this show? Star Trek? All right, I'll give it a go. Like, who's that? Why is she not the captain? You know? But I watched Discovery and I was sort of like, okay, it's all right. But about halfway through the first season, I was like, oh, okay, this is actually going somewhere. This is building to like with a story arc kind of thing. And by the end of season 1, I was like, yeah, that was pretty good actually. And then season 2 I thought was really good. And then it's sort of fallen away a bit after that. Yeah. Like the last 2 seasons, like once they've jumped now to the future, and they're at the furthest point in time out of anyone that's ever been in any of the Star Trek shows. Like they're in the whatever they are, the 29th century or whatever it is. They're like 700 years ahead of Pike, basically. Right. Or just give or take 100 years, whatever it was. Which is kind of like it sounds dumb to say, because it's like, oh, well, now you know that the Federation isn't really ever going to be under threat, because, well, you know, there's some form of it 700 years from now. So I guess the Borg never wiped them out, you know, or anything like that. But you could sort of do that about anything. It's like, well, did you really think that, you know, that this character would get killed? Like, you know. Right. But the thing I liked about season 2 as well, one of the highlights of season 2 was Pike, because they brought him in as like the temporary captain of Discovery while the Enterprise is having a refit. And sorry, my phone keeps going off. And I liked because I thought, oh, this would be interesting, because we've only ever seen Pike in one episode of the original series, and that was before the original series, so it doesn't really count. And then we see Pike in the chair, you know, with his flashy thing, and that's not even the same guy. I forget the guy's name. Hunter?
Jeffrey Hunter.
Yeah, he's not Pike in the chair. That's someone else. Right. With just, let's two-face him up and, you know, give him some beeps. And I can't ever remember thinking, like, when I've watched The Cage, like, it's a shame that we never got more Pike. I was just like, okay, we got Pike. I can see why they were like, we need something a bit more than this. And then we got Kirk, who was like, okay, now we're rolling. You know, like I could see the executives being like, yeah, I can sell that, you know. Whereas The Cage now, it's probably okay if it came out today, but back then it was a little bit too cerebral, I think, for a lot of people.
That's what the network said. That was literally the note. It's too cerebral.
We don't get it, kind of thing. So, plus, I guess it had the disadvantage of having not a lot come before it either. So the whole thing of like, what do you mean they're in like a spaceship? You know, like, okay, yeah, you know, sort of the transporter. And it's, whereas now, like once Star Wars hit now, then everybody knows what like sci-fi spaceships, laser guns, you know, like that sort of the whole genre kind of exploded then, and everyone's their sense of like they're able to grasp the concepts a lot quicker after Star Wars, I think, than like back in 65 or whatever when they dropped the cage, you know.
Right.
But I like that Pike was kind of, he was almost like your prototype Kirk, but not quite. And you could see, like, I could see why Kirk looks up to this guy, kind of thing. And I remember thinking, like, oh, it'd be good if if Pike had a show, especially once they had the flashes of number one. Like, she popped up a couple of times in Discovery as well. And I was like, oh, that's cool, you know. So then when they said, oh, yeah, we are doing a Pike show, I was like, oh, good, you know.
Yeah.
And like season one was okay, I thought. I didn't hate it, but some episodes I thought, oh, that was good, and some I was just like, okay. Like, I don't know what they thought they were doing. But I have a theory. I feel that season 2 was much better, and I have a theory as to why that may be, but we can get into that later if you want.
Oh, see, that's fascinating, because I think you might be in a little bit of a minority, because I think there are just as many fans that were disappointed with season 2. For a lot of the reasons that will legislate as we go. As for me, I was always intrigued by the character of number one, like even back during the cage, like, you know, just as portrayed by Majel Barrett, as just kind of like this kind of like steely badass. For some reason, there was just something about that character that always spoke to me. There was a IDW Comics series. I think John Byrne did it. And it's just kind of like, it's a solo miniseries all about number one. And I liked it quite a bit. So when Rebecca Romijn shows up as number one in Discovery, I was actually honestly more intrigued with that, and of course seeing the Enterprise, than I was with the idea of Pike. But then Anson Mount comes in with that outdoorsy charm of his that is different than very different energy from a Kirk, but still kind of like, as you said, kind of like that prototype, kind of like, I don't know, in a weird way. And I know we might disagree with some of like the characterizations of Pike, but like this just popped into my head. But he has almost kind of a Peter Cullen Optimus Prime quality to him, you know, kind of like the be strong enough to be gentle type of thing.
I can see that as well. I think a lot of that too is that this Pike that we get now is a Pike that knows what's going to happen to him.
Right.
Whereas, like, if it was just Pike, like, I'm just Pike, I don't know, you know, oh, gee, I hope I don't get put in a chair later, you know.
Right,
right. He knows what's going to happen to him. And for all the people that are like, oh, maybe they'll change, no, he's going into the chair.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to happen because it happens in TOS. And then he gets his happy ending later, but don't worry. But, like, he's not in the chair forever. You know what I mean? He still gets his happy ending, but he's going in the chair. So it's not a case of like, oh, you know, the whole season's going to be about avoiding my fate and this kind of thing. So I think the fact that you have a character now that knows where he's headed, so he's almost like, well, he is that old cliche of like, oh, make every day count kind of thing and help people as much as you can. So I think it was a smart decision for him to have that where Pike does find out, like he sees his own future and things like that. Because you think then, what would Kirk or Spock or Bones or anyone like that be like if they had been told that as well?
Right.
You know, like what would Spock, I mean, he comes back to life, but what if Spock knew that he was going to die in Wrath of Khan? What else would he have done before that? Like, would he have started the negotiations with the Romulans earlier? Thinking that, well, I've only got up until Wrath of Khan, then I die. You know what I mean? So, like,
oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because you would assume he wouldn't think like, well, I know I come back to life. If he just thought that was it, your characters then are fundamentally changed, and you can then. That's a good excuse to be like, oh, Pike was meant to be a real hard ass, and he didn't. talk to the crew and this kind of stuff. Yeah, but that was before he found out what's going to happen to him. So now he's trying to, especially the mentorship thing with like Lan and Ortegas and all that sort of stuff, So yeah, I don't mind that they've altered Pike's character a little bit because to start with, like I said, we only had him for one episode anyway.
Right.
And it's a Star Trek in name only, really. The Cage, because it's like, well, technically it's not Star Trek because that's not what they picked up. They picked up, where no man has gone before, and with Kirk and Spock, and so it's sort of retroactively been like, oh yeah, we had this old pilot. Let's use it as let's use the footage from it as flashbacks for an episode with Spock and his old captain kind of thing. And then people were like, oh, can we see this episode again? And of course they re-released it. And now streaming services and all that, like if you sit down and go, right, let's watch the very first episode of Star Trek, it's The Cage.
Yeah. So. And for a certain generation, it's always been there, that
right.
kind of thing. Yeah. Whereas even for us, like folks our age, it wasn't always the case. The Cage was like released on video like later. I remember watching it after I had seen the Menagerie, and I'm just like, wait a second, this is the Menagerie, but wait, there's all this other stuff going on too, and it really just kind of messed me up a little bit. And it's like it's like a
light bulb moment. It's like, I get it now. That's what just go, okay, right. That's how they got all that new footage, and why Spock smiles, and which they've done. That's another thing that they've sort of. There's an excuse for that, which I can sort of roll with. They almost tried to retroactively be like, "Oh, see, it's not a mistake." So
there's a little bit of that for sure.
That's all right. That's fine.
Yeah, one joke I wanted to get in before we drifted too far. What my favorite thing about the Menagerie, though, is that it's an episode of Star Trek where the cast watches an episode of Star Trek.
Yeah,
it always makes me very fun. It's like the characters watch an episode of Star Trek. That's pretty terrific. Basically that performance won me over. So like I was really from Anson Mount. I mean, I along with internet fandom, I was excited for a potential spinoff of Discovery where it's like we're back on the Enterprise and it's Pike and it's number one and it's Spock, and so that idea very much appealed to me, and I really enjoyed season one. I liked that they were going back to more of an episodic style season, whereas things like Discovery and even Picard as well, highly serialized. Like New Trek had become serialized, and it's okay to have like an ongoing story. Like I think TNG did this best, where it's like, or actually, no, I think the master class on it was DS9, where it's like, I mean, so it's like, so you see the formula getting refined, but like if you're doing a throwback prequel reboot quell type of thing, go back to that episodic sensibility. So that appealed to me, and it even appealed to me that not all of the episodes hit, like, because like if people, it's easy for folks to forget. Like I think everybody thinks that every episode of TOS is a grand slam home run, and I promise you, my friend, it is not.
No, they're either really, really good or really, really shit. There's not very many where I was like, I was all right.
Yeah, there's not a lot of middle. So, and what I found with Strange New Worlds is there was a lot of middle, and that appealed to me as well. It's like, I'm getting things that I'm liking, and I liked the cast. I like the new characters. I wasn't as quite excited about the nostalgia bombing. Like, I didn't think Uhura needed to be there. I felt like that was too soon, but she won me over. Celia Golding is terrific. I mean, she really inhabits that role very well. So it's one of those things where I kind of got over it. But yeah, no, I really enjoyed season 1 to the point where that finale episode, it reminded me of some of my favorite things about Star Trek. You know, you get like alternate realities, you get time travel. I am a sucker for a Star Trek time travel episode. And at this point where, I think I was fully in love with Captain Pike at this point. I think I had already started changing my hair. But like when he rounds that corner wearing the Monster Maroon jacket, I'm just like, it gave me something that we could never have because of what happens to Pike. So, and I think we've talked about this before, but like for me, the TOS movie era is my favorite era of Star Trek. Like I love the red uniforms. It's just like there's just something about it. Like and it was all of the things that Gene Roddenberry hated, but that Nicholas Meyer loved. Like, I liked the uniform militaristic aspect of it. I loved all like the naval terms, and it's just basically like we're a navy in space and we're doing like submarine chases, and so like all of that nautical stuff just just really appealed to me. So I always liked that kind of Nicholas Meyer sensibility. So
the Navy thing makes perfect sense because they're on a ship.
Right.
So you think, well, all right. But not only that, like all the ranks are naval ranks.
Mm-hmm.
There's no majors, there's no colonels. They're not army ranks, they're naval ranks. The only rank is captain, but it's captain in the naval sense where the captain is in charge, not captain as in like MASH, where captain is like a lieutenant kind of thing. Like the equivalent of a captain in the Navy is a colonel in the Army.
Oh, sure.
So,
okay.
If that makes sense. So like for TV purposes, Captain Kirk is the same rank as like Henry Blake on MASH.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Or Colonel Potter. Like the guy that's in charge of the unit / ship is either captain or colonel. Right. So then you might have lieutenants and whatever else is, but captain in the Army is not a big deal. Like you got ranks above that. But captain in the Navy is like, you're the man. You're in charge.
Yeah.
But all the ranks are the same. Like there's lieutenant commander, they go into Commodore, Admiral, all that stuff. Like they're all naval ranks.
Right. Yeah. It's a space Navy basically.
Yeah. Pretty much.
So that finale episode gave me a lot of stuff that I really liked and really kind of set the table to be excited for season 2, which has now finally come and gone. And there was, if I remember correctly, about a year in between, if I remember correctly.
I think so. Yeah, it felt like about that anyway. Yeah, because we had, I think we might have had Discovery after, like the latest season of Discovery. I think came out after Strange New Worlds.
Oh gosh, yeah, you're probably right.
And then, of course, Picard. So I could be wrong on that. Discovery, it feels like to me we got season 1 of Strange New Worlds, season 4 of Discovery, then we had season 3 of Picard, and now we're back to Strange New Worlds.
Right.
And then Picard's done, and we'll get Discovery, the last season of Discovery, next year.
Next year, I think.
I think it's January or February. I think.
Yeah, something like that. So for me, it's like it feels like with all of that converging, and of course, Lower Decks humming along as well.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
It feels like it's been a really good time to be a Trek fan. And not only in a I'm trying to figure out how to say this without sounding like a gatekeeping asshole, but it feels like a good time to be a true Star Trek fan as well. Because like that was the thing that really blew me away about Lower Decks is like, the animation style kind of put me off. I'm not into Rick and Morty, so it's like, it looked too wacky, too zany, but I gave it a bash and it blew my hair back. I was just like, oh, not only is this respectful to the source material, it's genuinely funny, but more importantly, it's just damn good Trek.
Like, I haven't seen a lot of Lower Decks. I've seen, I think, maybe half of the first season.
Okay.
And it's not because, I mean, I don't love it, but I don't hate it either. But it's not one where I'm just like, I'm not watching any more of this. But I also don't then go, oh, I gotta watch more Lower Decks.
Right.
But the one thing, though, that I will get, a lot of that is because of Mariner as well.
Oh, sure. Okay.
I don't mind the character, but it's just odd to me. And that was a problem I had with the first season of Strange New Worlds as well, is like these characters that are acting like they're at the mall on a Starfleet vessel. Like, you were out the door day one.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, yep. But Lower Decks, I kind of let it go a lot more because it's a wacky, funny cartoon thing. You're like, okay, fine. But I'm just not a big fan in general of characters that are like too cool for school. Like, I'm the smartest person in the room and everyone else is idiots. It's like, you're fucking nothing.
Yeah.
Like, why aren't you the fucking captain then?
Right.
You know what I mean? And like, that's where originally, you go back to that first Spider-Man, the first Tom Holland Spider-Man. When we had like MJ, before she was MJ, she was just Michelle.
Right.
And it was like, okay, righto. They totally do the whole Christopher Nolan thing. Like, oh, you should go by your middle name, Robin. It's like, yawn.
Yeah.
But that whole thing was like, Ned was cool. Like, you had Ned and there was another girl in the movie. I can't remember now. Is it Betty?
Liz Allen.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, she was good, decent.
Because that's Keaton's daughter.
That's right. That's right. Betty Brant's she's like the blonde girl that's running around with Ned later on.
Yeah.
But like, Liz, she was a fair, decent character. Especially with the whole thing of like, oh shit, she's the Vulture's kid.
Yeah.
But the whole Michelle thing, it was just like, oh, really? This other character now that's too cool for school, and like, I don't need any friends, and like, you guys are all idiots, and I've got smart ass comment to say over everything. Like, fuck off. Like,
real quick.
And Mariner's a bit like that. But not to the point where I'm like, oh, fuck you. But I got a little small doses kind of thing, which I will say, after the crossover, I am keen to see more Strange New Worlds, but not because, I don't know, there's something, she might just be growing on me a bit. I don't know. I still hate that kind of, it doesn't fit in Star Trek to me.
Right.
But it's okay. Like, it doesn't have, you know what I mean? That's fine. But the thing that I will say with Strange New Worlds is whoever's putting together like the little references and things like that, they have researched it a lot.
Yeah.
More than Strange New Worlds has.
That is true. Yeah, no, that is one of the things that I appreciate about the Lower Decks is that the deep the depth of reference. And
everyone on Lower Decks is wearing the right color uniform.
Yeah.
And has the right amount of pips on their neck.
So season 1 of Strange New Worlds ends on a cliffhanger of sorts, where we find out the truth about number 1, the truth about Una, and that she's secretly an X-Men, and has X-Men superpowers, but instead of being carted off to Xavier School for gifted youngsters, instead she's hauled off to prison. And it's a big damn cliffhanger. And I mean, obviously we'll talk about cliffhangers later, but I think it's interesting that when you have like time that could be measured in months and years as opposed to weeks and months, it makes me wonder about the impact of cliffhangers and how effective they can be, because I don't know. I mean, jumping all the way to the end, I get the feeling that this cliffhanger for Strange New World season 2 is going to end in like some weird postmodern way. It's going to be like previously on Star Trek Strange New Worlds, and it sets up the cliffhanger, and then like a title card is going to come up and says like 6 months later or something like that. And it deals with like the fallout and ramifications of that or whatever. I mean, we don't even know when season 3 is going to start. If it's going to start, you know, you got a writer strike, you got an actor strike, and from what I understand, the season 3 was in like the infancy of pre-production. Like some scripts were written, but I don't know if there was like an overarching outline, and really if like, let's say the actors stop striking, there's no material for them to work with. You know, so it's going to be years before that third season comes around, and we'll get there, but I don't know how to feel about that. There's a part of me that thinks that perhaps they should have reworked the ending of the episode, knowing where that was going to go. I don't know. That's a weird hot take from me, but I don't know.
I think it's also a bit of it's a bit of a like, well, we'll hold the show hostage as well. So like, fine then, cancel this. Don't make season 3 then, and you're gonna have this massive fucking hole in your Star Trek continuity. Right. So you're gonna watch Strange New Worlds, you're going to get up to the thing, and then the next thing you're going to watch is TOS.
Sure.
Like, oh, hang on.
Yeah. It's like, but what happened? It's like, read a comic book, read a novel, or some such like that.
So it could almost be a bit of that. It's like, well, if you don't, well, I have to bring us back now, otherwise they'll never get all their questions answered, kind of thing. So I will say as well, like historically, Star Trek hasn't really had much of a problem being renewed either. True. It does seem to be one of the few shows where they're just like, yeah, you're probably going to get 6 or 7 years out of this. It's never like, oh, then we got a season 5, then we got a season 6. Like Next Gen was probably the only one that was like that, but then that was only the second ever show of Star Trek ever, which was following the original series, which only had 3 seasons.
Right.
Anyway, so that, I guess once they got to season 4, they were probably like, holy shit, like this is new territory kind of thing. But then I think once they like, for instance, when they hit 7 seasons, and then Deep Space Nine hit 7 seasons, like Voyager was always going to get 7.
Right.
You know what I mean? Enterprise.
That became the industry standard, I guess.
Yeah, like what's a Star Trek show? A Star Trek show is about 7 seasons. Mostly. And even even though if you look at it, there's only 3 that have. But that would be like, if I like my guess would be with Strange New Worlds, you're probably going to get 5, maybe 6.
Right.
You might get 7, but I think, Picard was always going to be a shorter thing anyway, because Patrick Stewart's 100. So they're not going to commit to, as awful as it sounds, they're not going to commit to a 7-year thing and then go, oh, shit. Sorry.
Whoops. Now what?
Is James McAvoy available?
Right. No.
That's it. But I think, and like Enterprise only got the 4 seasons, but I think Enterprise was just too different. It was too different. Not for me. I liked Enterprise. I thought it was good. But I think it was just too different too soon after. Like, it come out the same year as Voyager ended. So, like, Voyager finished and then, boom, new one. I think they should have given it 2 or 3 years and then put Enterprise in the same way that we didn't have anything for ages and then we got Discovery. And it was like, okay.
Yeah.
Like it or hate it, but at least it's, you're not just rolling in from one show to the next. This is not what,
Yeah, and it made us hungry for it.
Like you're watching the first episode of Enterprise, and like they don't even use the transporter. They don't have star dates. They're not the Federation yet, and it's like 3 months ago, or however long it goes, we were watching a sentient EMH, running around with the Borg chick and the female captain, and they're the Delta Quadrant, and all this. Like, we've seen Star Trek with all the technology, and now you're throwing us back to nothing.
Yeah.
Like I said, 3 or 4 months after we've just seen like the height of the Federation, at least, like in story time, in universe kind of thing. So whether that was it or I don't know, because it had, like, Enterprise had everything else that all the other shows do. So I don't know why. You got Archer, who's kind of Kirk, kind of. Yeah. You got T'Pol, who's kind of Spock, and also kind of 7 of 9. Like,
right.
You know what I mean?
Well, and I think that's where Enterprise kind of got hamstrung a little bit early on, is they were really trying to appeal to an audience outside of the target demo. They're just like, let's put this curvy lady in a slinky cat suit. Let's spend expended series of times greasing each other down with the anti-radiation goo. Yeah, man. Yep. Let's get down to our underpants, and we really got to put on this anti-radiation goo. I remember that happening in several episodes, and I'm just like, I remember even being in my 20s. I'm just like, what are we doing? Why is this happening?
Yeah. Does anyone not realize what this is for? Like,
right.
This is like,
I'm like, my dad is in the next room. Could you not?
It's like, we sort of roll with the excuse of the 7 of 9. Like, all right, let's
sure.
Let's pretend that she has to wear that because she has Borg things going on.
Right.
But like, yeah, it's like, what? All right.
Oh man. So as we start season 2 of Strange New Worlds, and I think where I was trying to go with this is like this first episode, The Broken Circle, kind of doesn't really pick up on the threads of the cliffhanger. It does a little bit, but it doesn't really resolve it. Instead, it's this zany caper where we have to go rescue Lon, and we have to deal with the Klingons, and we have to steal the Enterprise. And I think folks in my friend circle, when this episode aired, it was kind of met with just kind of like a shrug and a meh. Folks really weren't, I mean, again, at least in my circles, weren't necessarily like hating on it, like saying like it was, bad or not good or whatever, but something about it just wasn't quite clicking. I liked the episode, but it did feel like a bit of a slower start, especially coming off of a cliffhanger. What do you think about like the way that they kick off season 2 here?
I didn't mind it, but I sort of almost I don't want to sound pretentious when I say this because I'm not anything. I'm not anyone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I saw it as like in quotes, from the writing aspect of it.
Oh, sure.
And I was like, all right, we had a big cliffhanger. I know, Mike, that you want to know what happens to number one, right? So I know you're going to watch this episode because you want to see what happens to number one. Well, surprise, you're not going to find out what happens to number one. And you can get shitty all you like, but you watch the episode.
Right.
And then next episode is when you're really going to find out what happens to number one, and you're going to watch that too. So now I've made you watch 2 episodes instead of just one. And like,
I gotcha.
Walking Dead did it all the time. Oh no, how are they going to get out of this? We'll find out next week. No, you won't. You'll find out in 2 weeks' time or 3 weeks' time, because if we give you the answers next week, you might not watch after that.
Right.
So I keep you hanging around for the next couple, at least. So it could have just been a bit of that, because it doesn't really, like, nothing that happened from I'm a bit hazy on that one. I remember, like, it's a Spock episode pretty much. Like he steals the Enterprise. Is that where the stuff with him and Chapel starts? Or is it a bit later?
This is kind of the beginning of it.
Yeah. Because I get her storylines a bit mixed up, because she's got a few going on, you know what I mean? She's got like, there's the Chapel Mabenga stuff, and then there's the Chapel Spock, and then there's, like, she's kind of the linchpin of the show, really. Like, almost. Like,
very much so.
She's sort of the glue almost, where she's like, like Lan and Spock aren't really friends, and they don't really have anything to do with each other. They rarely ever have scenes together and stuff like that. But Chapel has scenes with both of them, and things like that. But yeah, I didn't mind it. I liked that it started to show us Spock a bit more of the, so I'm very rules and regulations, and I'll preach to everyone that this is the way it needs to be done, and unless I don't want to, and then I'll do what I want.
Right.
Spock.
and using logic to justify it.
Yeah, and there's another one later in the season, which obviously we'll get to, but where they actually play him into doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Where like we made Spock think he got one over on us, kind of thing. Right. Like we out logicked Spock's logic.
Yeah.
But I don't know, because that is very much a Spock thing. Like we said with the cage, like when Spock wants to break the rules and do what he wants to do, he doesn't. And his excuse, like when Bones or someone says to him, like, well, that's not very logical. It's like, well, it was logical to me. So, you know what I mean? So his logic is sound from his point of view. It might, you know what I mean? Right. He sort of does that, and Spock does that all the time. Like there's the episode where what is it? Is it a mock time? The one where Kirk and Spock fight. That's good.
That's a mock time.
I get they fight, and of course Spock thinks he's killed him.
Yeah,
thinks he's killed Kirk, and then when Spock's like, all right, throw
on the chains.
That's it. He's like,
take me to prison.
That's right. He's
woe is me! I've killed my best friend. Take me to jail.
He's like, I'll hand over the ship to Scotty, because they knew that show knew the chain of command and recognized who had what rank. I handed over to Scotty, and I'll wait for my punishment, kind of thing. And then Kirk strolls out. I was like, hey, and Buddy does like, Jim, and his big smile on his face, like, oh, you're alive, and then he quickly, they linger on it too, where you see Spock go like, oh shit, Like, I just smiled in front of everyone kind of thing.
Yeah,
and Bones calls him out on it, and he's like, oh, there must be some reaction to the air from Vulcan or something, blah, blah, blah. So it's like, so Spock has these moments quite a lot where it was like, oh, yeah, all right. Like, he's trying very hard to be a Vulcan.
Right.
Like, because he's half human. So a lot of the stuff that everyone assumes is just him being a Vulcan is him, like, forcing it almost. So, when Spock wants to do what he wants to do, he does it. And that's why I thought this they did a good job of him showing him do it in this episode, because he was like, all right, like, is he? I'm not sure. He probably is. I think after Pike and number one, he probably is next in command. Because they don't have any lieutenant commander. Well, they have one, but she's number one is lieutenant commander. They don't have any lieutenant commanders.
Oh, that's right.
The rest of them are all lieutenants. They even made a joke about that on the when
the crossover.
When our TOS guest star appears in the final episode, and he says, "This is Lieutenant such and such." Blah, 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 blah.
That's right.
Like, that's a lot of lieutenants.
That's a lot of lieutenants.
Everyone's a lieutenant.
Right.
Yeah. Because Lan's a lieutenant, Spock's a lieutenant, Ortega's is a lieutenant.
Mm-hmm.
So, I guess technically, is it Pelia, Carol Kane?
Yeah. Pelly.
She would technically be the next in command, but it's weird because you think, but she's in engineering, but then Scotty was in engineering as well.
Right.
He was always
because it's still by rank. So
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
unless you're a doctor.
Oh, sure. Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Beverly never got to do shit.
Right.
She has the same rank. She's the same rank as Riker. She outranked Data. She was never sitting in the chair. I sort of, and I wasn't too like. I thought like the cliffhanger thing with number one. I thought, that's okay, that's pretty cool. But I wasn't like, I've got to find out what happens. You know what I mean?
Right.
So when it was we're not doing it this week, it'll be next week. I was like, okay. I didn't sort of feel cheated, but I wasn't like dying to find out what happened. So.
Well, and they do this cool thing in the alternate timeline where Pike runs into Lon, who's now on the Farragut, and it's just like, well, hey, how's Una doing? It, Una, what are you talking about? Nobody's heard from her in 7 years, and so it kind of manufactures tension to where it's like, oh man, this could actually be a really big deal.
The fact that number one is one of those characters, like number one, Lan and Una.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Ortegas. Number one is Una. Number one, sure, Ortegas and Lan are the three characters that they've got free range on.
Yeah,
because they do
whatever they want with them. Yeah,
because it's not like, well, Spock has to eventually do this, and we know Uhura does this, and Chapel,
right?
And, even M'Benga a little bit, but M'Benga is in the very start of TOS, so you're not killing off M'Benga. So
right. And I do think that's smart that they, I'm sorry to say, because I like all these characters very much, but like, you got to have some dead meats in there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like some of these characters were created to create some stakes. I mean, look what happened to poor Hemmer. I mean,
yeah,
what a terrific engineer. I mean, what a great character.
I like him.
Yeah, he was great. So it crossing him off early is kind of a way to put a clock on the show and say, like, by the way, yes, we know that they're kind of making a agreement with the audience. It's like, yes, we know it's a prequel. We know, this, that, and the other thing is safe. But this other new stuff that we've created that you really like, not so much.
Yeah.
So I'm
probably giving them too much credit for this as well. But Hammer, Red Shirt, gone.
Right.
Lan and Ortegas, not in any other series in the future.
Right.
Red shirts.
Sure.
So if I find out that that's why Ortegas is in the red shirt when she shouldn't be, I'll be like, okay, I'll give it to you. Because she should be wearing gold. But anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
But if she's wearing a red shirt as a foreshadowing the whole time, like as a subtle nod, like, look, she is, dead man walking from the beginning because she's wearing a red shirt, even though she's not supposed to be. It's like, okay, I'll give them that, but they're not clever enough. Like, if it was Terry Metalis, I'd be like, I know what you're doing, Terry.
Right.
I see what you're doing.
Yeah.
Even the lower decks people, like we spoke about.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't have any great faith that the people that are in charge of Strange New Worlds have even seen Star Trek before.
Sure. So a couple other things to throw in the Broken Circle before we move on. This is the episode where you establish that M'Benga and Chapel are super soldiers. They've got their space cocaine. You inject yourself with the space cocaine and the super soldier serum, and it turns you to an invincible killing machine, which I think is pretty rad.
Veins, bit of venom in the.
Yeah. There you go. And I do like, one of the things that I do like about New Trek. There are things that I don't, but one of the things that I do like is how fucking metal it gets sometimes. It's just like just like these Klingons get killed. So it's interesting to see that your two Doctor characters, and we'll learn more about their past later, but like the implication is that they've done this before also.
Yeah. The two characters whose oath starts with "do no harm" have done the most harm.
Yeah, they do all the harm.
That's what I said. Like, M'Benga. Yeah, the stands for murder.
Oh man, that dude's taking lives like he's collecting infinity stones or something. Right. My gosh,
like, I don't have time for this shit. My daughter grew up into a hologram lady and floated away. He gives zero fucks anymore. He doesn't care.
Right? Yeah, he's
that's a storyline. Just real quick, that's a storyline that in season 1 that I was surprised that they sort of wrapped up and moved on from really quickly. Whereas like his sick daughter was in the transporter buffer, and then he'd let her out for a couple of minutes so that whatever disease she had didn't, she essentially never got any sicker because she's almost in a suspended animation kind of thing.
Right.
Which was a nice little call forward, whatever you want to call it, to like Relics in TNG where Scotty comes out of the buffer. He's been in it for like 80 years or whatever.
Yeah.
And then later in the series as well, when we see, M for murder, M'Benga, there's another incident with the transporter buffer, and I was like, okay, cool. That adds a little bit more spectrum back to his character as well if you go back and watch season 1. So, but I was surprised that they sort of moved on from that. So I thought like, oh, yeah, she's going to be in there like for the whole show, it's maybe they got to a point with a bit like Walt on Lost where they were like, this kid's aging.
Right.
Like it's a year later and the kid looks a year older. Like, what are we going to do? It's only been 3 weeks on the island, but it's probably good as well because that could have really dragged on. And here's another episode of angst-ridden M'Benga,
Right. And for my buck, it felt like it was already kind of wearing out his welcome a little bit.
I was really hoping that it wasn't going to be something like where like, oh, it looks like we've sent off the data to all the greatest minds in Starfleet and only one sent back a possible option. And it's like, oh, who sent it back? Dr. McCoy? Yeah,
sure.
Like, oh, fuck. You know what I mean? Like something like that. Where I was like, I was really hoping it wasn't just that sort of thing. Like, oh yeah, no, we don't need to. Like, we know Bones is good. You don't have to. He doesn't have to be the only good Doctor. You know what I mean?
Right. And I feel like that's kind of sort of the trajectory that the show is going. Like, again, jumping all the way to the end, I don't mind this kid is Scotty. And I like the performance, and I would like to see more of him. But by the same token, though, I don't necessarily need the member berries. It's just like, if you're going to establish this crew of new old characters, then just let them flourish and be their own thing. Now, if this is this Scotty dude's only appearance for like a while, I'm okay with that. Yeah. But like, if he like joins the cast, I keep trying to call him Ron Weasley, but that's not his name. The dude who plays Kirk, he's in like every episode now. He's part of the cast. Like I got into a bit of a discussion argument with a buddy of mine at work, and he's saying like Kirk is in like every episode, and he showed me a meme of like the old paperback books in like the style of like the old styles, and it's like it's a picture of Kirk and Pike, and the title says like, "Why are you always on my ship?" that kind of thing. But it's like, but I reminded my friend, I was like, they announced halfway through season 1 that he was going to be a regular cast member on season 2. So it's like they shrug, they already announced it. Well, I don't remember that. And I'm like, well, I'm sorry that you didn't, but that doesn't make it any less so. That's why he's in so many episodes. So, but yeah, I mean, like at this point, we're only Sulu away from having the full Where No Man Has Gone Before crew. So because Chekhov doesn't show up until season 2, McCoy isn't in more than not more than meets the eye. Jeez, where no man has gone before. At least I don't think so.
No, because M'Benga is still the Doctor.
Oh, that's right. So anyway, like, but
when Sulu shows up, you'll know if they've done their research or not, because when Sulu first turns up, he should be wearing blue.
Right.
Because when he starts off on the Enterprise, he's like a botanist or something like that. He's in the science. He's in one of the science departments. I'm sure it's a botanist or something like that.
Gotcha.
And then he becomes helmsman later. But yeah, so he should be, if he rocks up wearing the gold, we're like, nope.
well, given the costuming department's already spotty knowledge, being charitable, spotty knowledge of uniform patterns, so maybe, okay, here's where this is going to be the Marvel No Prize thing. They dress him in blue by accident because they don't know what is what, but it ends up being accidentally right.
And I'm like, look, they did it. And you're like, yeah, that's what we did. That's right.
Oh my God.
He'll turn up wearing red, and he'll have three bars on his sleeve. I'll be like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Yeah.
He's not a captain.
Right. I mean, not yet, at least. Not yet, at least.
Let me know when we want to go into the uniform nitpicking. But
well, you know what? Just so that we don't lose the thread, let's do some of that legislation now, because I get the feeling when we get into the next episode, it's going to be there's going to be some stuff to discuss there. But
it annoys me that you have characters wearing the wrong rank insignia.
Sure.
Like it's happened before, like Tuvok in Voyager was sometimes wearing, he's a lieutenant for most of the show, then he gets promoted to lieutenant commander. But sometimes he's wearing one pip instead of two. He's wearing two pips instead of three with one blacked out.
With the blacked out one, yeah.
Yeah, and like if you're listening to this, I'm sure you would have some semblance of how to identify the rank in Star Trek, but I mean, a lot of people don't, and that's fine.
Right.
The only reason I noticed it originally was because of how consistent it was. And you could figure it out. And you watch even TOS and you can figure it out. Like Kirk has 3 stripes on his sleeve because he's the captain. So he's got the most stripes. Spock has 2 stripes, right? Because he's a commander. So, 3 stripes, 2 stripes. Spock's the next one down. Then all your lieutenant commanders, like Bones, even though he's the doctor, he's still lieutenant commander. And you can tell because of his sleeves. Scotty, they're lieutenant commanders. They have a stripe and like a dashed
the dashes
stripe kind of thing, which in Strange New Worlds it's a full stripe and a thin stripe,
right?
So
no
they got rid of the dashes. They just have like thick stripes and thin stripes basically, which is fine because you can change up. I don't care how you change it, you just got to be consistent.
Right.
And then like lieutenant is 1 stripe and ensign is nothing. Right. So Chekhov has nothing on his sleeves. Right. Sulu and Uhura they have 1 stripe. But all through it, it's pretty consistent. Someone else will turn up and like, yeah, great. Next Gen was mostly consistent. O'Brien is the one character that's just like, fuck it. It could be anything. Like he's all over the place. Like he has a lieutenant pip sometimes. Sometimes he's like, then he's a petty officer. So he's not really, he doesn't have a rank. And it's like, how is he like 50 and not ever, be outranked by Bashir, like that's, but then they sort of they got a bit more technical as well because you have lieutenant, junior grade and all this kind of stuff. So, but if you know what you're looking for, you can spot it. So like basically like your in between ranks have the same amount of pips, but one of them is blacked out. So, lieutenant is 2 pips. Right, and commander is 3. But if you're a lieutenant commander, you have 3 pips, but one of them's blacked out. If that makes sense, it's like it's the equivalent of the dash. You don't have a full stripe; you got a dash. So okay, fine. Even Enterprise, they went back to their like NASA uniforms.
Yeah,
but Archer has 4 little badges or whatever they are on his chest. And like Trip has 3 because he's a commander, and Hoshi only has 1 because she's an ensign. You know what I mean? So the pip, they matched. It's funny, they went from pips to stripes back to pips.
Well, because it's easier to get little pins than to do a new set of embroidery on somebody's uniform sleeves. Yeah. That's a lot of stitching. Whereas you could just put a little enamel pin on there.
Stick it back on. That's right.
Yeah.
So then Strange New Worlds comes about. It's like, hang on a second. Spock's a lieutenant. Now, who's got the right? Kirk's a lieutenant in the show, right?
Yes.
I think he's the only lieutenant that's wearing lieutenant stripes. He's got one stripe on his. He has 1 stripe on his cuff because he's a lieutenant. You're like, all right, good. Ortegas and Spock and what's her name, Lan.
Yeah,
they're all lieutenants. They got a thick stripe and a thin stripe, so they should be lieutenant commanders.
Oh yeah,
right.
So
number one has 2 thick stripes, which if you look at it, go, well, she's a commander, but she's not. Right. She's a lieutenant commander.
Just doesn't make any sense. Makes no damn sense.
Pike's good. He's good.
Yeah.
He wears the green sometimes as well. They're like, all right.
Yeah, which I really like the update on the green captain's casual wear or whatever that is when he's like entertaining dignitaries.
That's the shirt. That's the shirt for fucking. That's what that shirt is.
Yeah, right.
Like that's the shirt where it's like, oh, captain's
easy access tunic.
That's right. I don't have time for this other 2
just
layers.
When you gotta get down to fucking.
That's right.
And he ends up doing no such thing wearing that outfit.
No. But then even the dialogue as well sometimes. Yeah. Like there's an episode where in this season of Strange New Worlds and number 1 confronts Pelia? Did we decide how it's said? Carol Kane?
I think it's Pelia. I think so.
And she says to her, you've lived for 1,000 years or whatever it is, and yet I outrank you. And I'm like, no, you don't. Someone's made a mistake here, because if you're lieutenant commander, right? Peely is a commander. She's a full commander.
Yeah,
So you don't outrank her.
Right.
Even though, well, you outrank
and yet
her.
She's the first officer.
Yeah. You outrank her in the sense that you're in the command division. I can give you that.
Sure.
But, like the same way that Bones, for instance, outranks Sulu, but if Kirk and Spock and Scotty are off the ship, Sulu sits in the chair. Right?
Yeah.
But
I mean, or I suppose it would be even later in the movie era where Scotty is captain of engineering, and when you go into Final Frontier and Undiscovered Country, he retains his rank of captain.
Yeah, he's captain. Yeah. So you can. They still have. That's the thing. So it what it seems to me is it's a. I think it annoys me because it's not so much the show, because I can just go, whatever. It doesn't matter.
Sure.
It doesn't ruin the show for me. But what it is, I think, is it's a subconscious thing that I have about, I think it's sort of indicative of like TV and Hollywood at the moment, where it's a bit like, I have a story to tell, but nobody gives a fuck because no one cares. So what I'll do is I'll take this existing IP and I'll just like use it to tell my story, but it doesn't really matter all the shit that's come before it, because what's important is my story. It's like, if you make a Star Trek show, you should probably stick to the rules of a Star Trek show.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Or make something else. Like,
and I get that perspective in spirit, but are you going so far as to say that this season of Strange New Worlds isn't Star Trek?
Oh, no, not at all.
Okay.
No. But it just seems like I guarantee you most of the people that have written episodes for this series haven't. Mm-hmm. They don't. I bet you that whole thing, this is why I'll bet money on it.
Yeah, here we go.
Someone read the script. Someone read one of the scripts, right?
Yeah.
Or the costume designer or whoever, right?
Uh-huh.
And even if it's not their fault necessarily, because the costume designer, to a degree, should be told little nuances like that, right?
Sure.
So someone's read the script and they've referred to number one as commander. Like, okay, commander, you have the bridge or whatever. Right. Like, she's a commander. Okay. 2 stripes. Put 2 stripes on her sleeve. No. Like, not realizing that they address lieutenant commanders as commander as well.
Right.
Which is a weird thing. I don't know why that's a thing, but it is.
And that's always been a thing.
Yeah. It's always have Commander Data meet me in the blah, 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 blah. Don't you mean Lieutenant Commander Data? Like, it's just always get Commander LaForge, and Commander Worf and all this, when they're all lieutenant commanders. Mm-hmm. So it's just a thing that they say. So I would say it's probably like that. Someone's gone, well, it says in the script she's a commander. Like it does and it doesn't. But that's where some would have gone, yeah, but she's a lieutenant commander.
Yeah.
Then you have the other hand. It's like, well, why isn't she a full commander? She's the first officer on the ship. She should be everything
of the flagship of the Federation. Yeah. I mean, the Enterprise is the flagship, right?
I'm not sure about. I don't know. I don't know if it. I can't remember if it is in TOS era. It definitely is when Picard has it. Like the D is the flagship.
Got it.
I'm not sure about TOS because I think it's sort of there's a whole bunch like floating around.
Sure.
It might be though because when Kirk gets no, because then that doesn't make sense either. Because Kirk's first command is the Enterprise.
Correct. Yeah, and that wouldn't make sense that they would just give him the flagship.
Flagship.
Well, knowing what we know now, he spends a whole lot of time over on the Enterprise. So when he was up for promotion, they were like, "Well, hey, we could have you take command of the Yorktown, but we know you have so much familiarity with the Enterprise because you spent so much time there."
Yeah, it's like, look, he's going to be there anyway. Just give it to him.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he already knows where all the cubbies are, and
that's right.
where the hallways lead and all that. Yeah, sure.
He did a dance there in the hallway.
Right.
So to me, like, there's a mistake where I go, there's three channels. I'll leave it at this. There's three channels of where the mistake has happened, or what is the mistake, right? So there's the mistake where Spock's wearing the right colored shirt, but he's got the wrong stripes. Okay, so they've just gone, he's a lieutenant, but he should only have one stripe, but we've given him 1.5, or a thick stripe and a thin stripe. So there's that's a mistake there, right? Or there's a mistake where they've gone, well, number one is a lieutenant commander, but she's got double thick stripes, so she has commander rank on her sleeve. But to me, the mistake there is probably the lieutenant commander part of it.
Yeah.
She should probably be full commander. So, and that's an instance where the uniform is probably right, but the script has let them down, where they've said that she's lieutenant commander. Then there's Ortegas, where it's like she's not only wearing... Lan is in the same category as Spock.
Yes.
Right colored shirt, wrong insignia. She should only have the one stripe.
Right.
And again, though, they should be lieutenant commanders. They're the head of their departments. So
correct. Yeah.
Anyway, whatever.
Yeah. Instead of all being lieutenants, they should all be commanders.
They should all be lieutenant commanders, at least.
Yeah.
And then Ortegas is not only wearing... She's a lieutenant. She's not only wearing lieutenant commander stripes, she's wearing the red shirt, where she should be wearing gold like Pike.
Correct. Yeah.
And the other lady, the navigator, I don't know her name, but the navigator that sits next to her quite often, she's always wearing red too. I'm like, no, it's gold. Now, if you fluff it away with some little half-assed line of dialogue or something where they say, okay, well, this is in between the Discovery blue uniforms and the full-on TOS system, and they're still figuring stuff out, because we know in the future the colors swap. Right. Because Picard and Riker end up wearing red, and Data and Worf and that wear gold, whereas if they're in TOS, it would be a reverse, which they did in the DS9 episode, where they go back into the Trouble with Tribbles episode.
Yeah.
They made a joke of it. Like, Cisco comes out in the gold, and they're like, aren't you wearing the wrong color? And I was like, no. It's, so that's fine. So we know colors change. Shit happens. They go to the Monster Maroon, like you said.
Yeah.
Shit changes, no problem. They go from having black shoulders to red colored bodies, and then they just go, no, we're just going to have the fucking strip on the shoulders, which is, that's probably my favorite uniform after TOS is the Deep Space Nine ones. I like just the black suit with just the shoulders, the colored shoulders. I like that.
And the gray turtleneck.
Yeah. So like the before they went to the full on the First Contact, where everyone's wearing the gray. I like when they just,
which I don't like that one as much.
I'm not a big fan of that.
I like that it's more detailed, like, because it's a movie, so it's like, they threw more stitching into the shoulders and stuff like that. But like the color in the turtleneck doesn't pop as hard as the shoulders from the DS9 outfits do.
They do look like they're all the same shirt, like it's, which they all kind of are, but like so like, okay, so here's the excuse. You could say they're still in the early stages of figuring out the new, what do you call it, department, colors, and all this
uniform code or whatever.
Gold is for command, command and the command and bridge crew. Blue is the sciences, so obviously that's why Spock is blue, and even the doctors, because medicine. and red is for operations. So all the operations of the ship, that's why Uhura is red, because she's communications. LAN and security officers, that's why all the red shirts. That's why they're all all because they were the security guys,
And
then engineering,
exactly.
Pelia, she's wearing the red. Great. Hammer, he had red. They're the engineers. Great. Right. Now, if you want to argue that in the early days of the colours swapping over, they figured, well, the helmsman and the navigator, they're operating the ship. They're kind of operations. Should they be wearing red? Sure. Okay. But I want to see Kirk sitting in that chair as captain and Ortegas wearing a red shirt. No.
Well, since we know it's going to be at least a couple years before season 3 comes out, I wonder if there's going to be a thing where somebody is listening to this podcast or they see all of Greg's tweets and they get all of Greg's emails, and it ends up being like a plot point in there where it's like, I could imagine it now. So somebody needs to write this fan fiction, but I think they're on the bridge and it's just like, they're having like this a clerk style litigation there at the control, saying like, well, we are kind of operating the ship, but we're like in the command structure. And it's like, and then, Kirk says like, go put on some gold shirts or something like that. And there it is. And that's how it happens.
I mean, the shows already have, have you seen the credits? Yeah. This show has like 25 producers.
Yeah. It's like unwieldy.
What do they do? Like, so I'll just... Paramount, just give me a producer credit. I'll be a uniform guy.
Yeah, there you go.
Hey, we've got this character. Where does he work? He's an engineer. What rank is he? Ensign. Right. Red shirt, no stripes. Next.
Yeah, and that's just what's in your inbox all the time, where it's just like, they just send you like sample swatches or something like that, where it's like, no, gold shirt, 2 stripes.
That's right. I mean, nope.
Move along.
Yeah, that's the other one. What the fuck is Chapel wearing?
Yeah,
I'll give her the white. Right,
she's wearing a slinky jumpsuit is what she's wearing.
I'll tell you what, I've no problem with the white. She can wear that as ever long as she wants. No problem. Why has she got commander stripes?
Well, because she's the commander of Bane juice or something. I don't know. That's real dumb. That's stupid. The commander of taking lives.
And I don't think she's even technically Starfleet at the moment. I have to double check it, but I don't think she's Starfleet yet. That's why she's excited about her internship or whatever.
The fellowship thing, yeah.
Yeah, because she's going to go off.
She's excited to get in some of that Roger Corby, if you know what I mean, right. And I think you do.
Yeah, that's it. Nothing better than the Aussie bush.
Oh, God. That's awful. Go get us canceled. But she has a Delta. Yeah, I know. But she has a Delta shield though on, right?
I think so.
Okay.
I'm not 100% on that. Don't get me wrong. She could very well be, like Mabenga, like proper Starfleet and everything.
Gotcha.
But she shouldn't be wearing commander stripes.
Yeah.
Or if she is, like, that's weird. Because like she outranks Bones. When Bones turns up.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not in the context of what we're discussing here, but like of all of the Strange New Worlds characters, I'm the most perplexed by what they're doing with Chapel. Now, don't get me wrong, I like it because I like the performance. I like what Jess Bush is doing, and it adds retroactive depth to a character that was just really kind of in the background before. Like, kind of like, Chapel's defining trait was that she was just pining for Spock all the time. And at least now that and it's so weird though, because like you could say that this kind of, retroactively explains it, but it also kind of doesn't, because as we've seen, she's kind of over it. granted because of like stuff that she learns from the future, but but then it becomes like predestination paradox. Like, is what we see in TOS originally, is that influenced by the visitors from the future or not? It's like it gets a little hinky in terms of like how you want to interpret the impact of time travelers.
I think too, it's almost like if you haven't watched, like our friend Flo.
Oh sure, yeah.
Who has been on your show before, and she's been on a funny nerd tangent. And, I remember a few years ago she did the whole, because she's massive Star Wars fan. Like, knows more about Star Wars than anyone that I know. Mm-hmm. Like the books and the comic, like everything. Like, how come there's a Captain Antilles on the ship that Vader attacks at the start of Star Wars, and then there's Wedge Antilles? Are they related? And she's like, no. And here's why. Blah, 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 blah. Holy shit. Yeah. Okay. So for me, like, she's the uniform version. Yeah. She can, yeah. But she went back. She watched. She had never seen Star Trek before, right. And it was a few years ago, and she went and watched all of it. Yep. And she watched it in order, but in order of like as it was broadcast.
Yeah.
So she went and watched TOS, then she watched the animated series, then like the movies up until probably either just before or just after Undiscovered Country, because Next Gen had started in 87, and actually, so she would have started watching Next Gen and then watched Final Frontier in 89. You know what I mean? So she watched like that. Even so far, because she was telling me, even so far as she went onto Wikipedia and was checking like broadcast dates, so she would watch like Next Gen and Deep Space Nine episodes. So it might have been like season 4 of Next Gen, and then season 1 of Deep Space Nine, and then back and forth, and then Deep Space Nine and Voyager were crossing over. So it was like, no, Deep Space Nine was on Tuesday, so I had to watch that episode before Voyager season 2, and down to this crazy like serial killer detail.
That's unreal, man. I mean that's kind of where we're at with like the Marvel Netflix stuff. Like we're going to go back and give it another go. And the way it's set up on the Disney Plus, it's like Daredevil season 1, 2, and 3, Jessica Jones season 1 and 2, Luke Cage season 1, and it's just like
one shots, and
and I'm like, oh shit, how does that go? I forgot.
So she did it full on in order, and then because I said, did you watch Enterprise first? If you're watching it from the start kind of thing. She's no. She watched it as it came out on TV. Mm-hmm. So she got the full effect that everyone else would have had by going like, okay, now I know what Archer is referring to, and these things because we know what's coming and all that. So, but for someone, so she did it like that way. So for her, it wouldn't have made a difference. But I kind of feel sorry for anyone now who's then going to go, or especially if this is their jumping on point. And being like, I never really watched Star Trek before, but I started watching Strange New Worlds. It's the prequel to TOS. I really like it. Oh, and I really like Chapel. I can't wait to see what she does in TOS, because then you're just going to be, she doesn't do anything.
Right.
Like, like Spock you can go on with, Uhura you can go on with, obviously Kirk.
Certainly.
And I'm sure, like we said, they'll filter in probably more Scotty, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see Bones somewhere. Yeah. Just to say he's on the ship somewhere. Mm-hmm. And then, M'Benga's, I have to go home to my home planet or whatever, and off he goes. I've got to do another Coke run.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh no, I'm going to be sent to jail for killing any number of people at any given time.
Those ambassadors aren't going to kill themselves.
Right. Or did they?
Yeah. That's what the M stands for. So,
who could possibly know?
Yeah, it's either stands for murder or mistrial or like maybe
mystery.
Yeah. And I understand anyone that's listening. I understand it's an apostrophe. It's not doesn't stand for anything. It's his name.
I know.
But it. So, like for instance, I just think like they're almost doing, like they're doing really well with the Chapel character.
Yeah.
But then it's almost like a backhanded disservice because then you're going to go into TOS and she's just like, Nurse Chapel, I need 100 cc's of whatever. Here, yes, doctor. Oh, look at Spock, he's dreamy. And then like credits.
Yeah.
She turns up for 5 seconds in the motion picture where Bones mentions that she's, I hear Chapel's an MD now. God, and he seems, and then, okay, so she ends up becoming a doctor, and then she's not even on the crew with the movies or anything. It's just
no, she ends up back on Earth at Starfleet headquarters during Voyage Home because they're like, oh man, well, we got to divert all the power, and she's like, dude, we need the power for the medical facilities.
Yeah, what the
fuck? Like, right, because that's Nurse Chapel. I get it. Yeah. I mean, my 8-year-old brain was able to figure that one out. But yeah,
so it's sort of weird. I would really hate for someone to sort of jump onto the show and be like, especially like, this sounds terrible, but like, especially like, young girls or women that are, because let's face it, there's not many chicks watching Star Trek. Right. So for someone to get in and go, yeah, I love it. This is my show. That's my character. Love it. What else you got? Nothing.
Yeah. Sorry.
And you're not going to get more Ortegas. You're not going to get more whatever, unless they do a spin-off of the spin-off, and like Lan and Ortegas and something go off onto another ship or something. But
that'd be fine.
I have another idea too, which they could do time travel stuff too. But that's maybe, like, who's to say they're not around, because maybe they do the Discovery thing. That's the only thing that sort of ruins it. It's kind of already been done.
Yeah.
They could appear and then they're in. If they do Legacy or something.
Oh, they show up in Legacy. Dude, that would be rad. That would be cool.
With the resurrected Kirk, because we know that Kirk's in the what is it? The Daystrom interview?
He's in the Institute, yes.
He's there. He's in Project Phoenix. I know what that means. He's going to turn into a bird.
Exactly.
Break cycle.
Turns out all it is. I was going to say, it's like all it is. It's just Kirk with the Dark Phoenix powers.
Yeah, fuck yeah, there's a movie.
Oh man, it's all they do is just do like a poor version of Dark Phoenix, but it's just Kirk.
It's Kirk, yeah.
Oh no, we need to put him on trial because he did a light genocide with his Phoenix.
There you go. They bring back Kirk from in the Phoenix Project, and it's new Jim Carrey Kirk. And he's losing his mind and whatever the fuck. And it's like, there's only one other person we could get, but we're going to have to go back in time to get her.
Yeah.
Because the Section 31 steps in, and it's like, well, all right, she's already had time travel experience. Let's go get her. And they go and take her, and they pull her out of the past, and they bring her to the Legacy timeline. And Ortegas, the sneaky bitch, she comes with her.
Yeah,
there you go. So then you have Legacy, and you have Kirk off on his own thing. You can have Star Trek Kirk. We had Star Trek Picard. You have Star Trek Kirk, and he's already got a first officer / security person and a helmsman woman.
Right.
Person.
And they
first
just
thing
go
he
off.
does is like, what the fuck is that red shirt? He's like,
yeah, right.
Gold.
Exactly. And then they go off to Geordi's Space Museum and rock off in the Enterprise A.
Someone's stealing the Enterprise.
Yeah. Man,
like,
I'm so jealous. I wish I was a writer.
And you can have Kirk as well. It's like, how are we going to steal the Enterprise? And you'd be like, don't worry, I've done this before. Like,
Mr. Scott, the doors. Mr. Scott isn't here. And now, what?
See?
The doors, Mr. Scott, the doors. Sir. He's been doing it the whole time.
Yep.
Like he wasn't waiting for Kirk to just be like, and here we go. It's like, oh my gosh. Search for Spock rules. That movie's great.
To bring it back to Strange New Worlds, I did like.
Sure.
We're probably getting. I don't want to jump too far ahead, but I just quickly before I forget. I did like it when. I forget his name mixed up. Is it Boimler or Boimler? Boimler, yeah. Boimler says like, oh, Boimler. He's like, it's the Enterprise, the 1701 dash nothing, you know?
Yeah.
And they're like, why would there be a dash?
Yeah. Why would there be anything after the dash?
I was just waiting for him to be like,
all right. Well, let's get the let's try to get back on track a little bit, but I'm not hopeful. We get into for episode 2, we get into a very classic Star Trek trope. We get a classic courtroom episode in Strange New Worlds episode 2, Ad Aspera per Aspera, and I really like this episode quite a lot. I'm a fan of the tense courtroom dramas, like, you know, Measure of a Man, The Drumhead. I'm sure there's a few others that I can't think of off the top of my head. Court Martial, obviously. But like I really dug this episode, and this would be one of those ones where and I'm surprised we've been talking for almost 2 hours and haven't mentioned anything. Neither one of us has said the word woke. None of us has talked about like conservatives, that somehow like conservatives can be Star Trek fans too, which still baffles me. But like, if there was any material that those kinds of folks could point to, they could point at this and they would be absolutely wrong, because like the writing in this episode, I just thought was spectacular. And like I said, I like a good courtroom drama. I felt like it was very well acted, and this is a way to kind of, you know, resolve the whole number one cliffhanger thing. But the thing I want to say about this episode also, and this actually goes to like one of the trailers for season 2 of Strange New Worlds, like stupid stuff. You know, like I enjoy being pandered to. You know, it's like if you can find a way to like mash some buttons, and it's like, you know, the trailer opens and it's somebody ringing the bell for the court martial thing. I'm like, ooh. And it's like, they've got the uniforms and they've got like all like the gummy candy insignias and stuff. But the thing that made me kind of have a little bit of a giddy chuckle is the thing where they're playing data off of these square discs, where it's like, you know, they're going back to the old like 3x5 floppy disk type of things, to where aesthetically that's one of the things that I really like about Strange New Worlds, is like they really kind of try to split the difference between that retro futurism, to where it's like they're still trying to have it fit the aesthetic of TOS, but you can't do it straight across, because like for contemporary audiences it won't make any sense. So I feel like they do a really good job of hiding the outdated technology in a way that you don't notice it until somebody points it out, like with the data discs or the flip up communicators or the style of phasers they have. Yeah, exactly. And I like that they spend so much time on that. But like, yeah, as soon as I saw somebody plug in one of those discs, and even you know, kind of going on a tangent, but like even in some of the latter episodes, more of the classic TOS ambient noises are coming in, like a lot of like the boop 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 boop, and you know, just
the
like
lighting as well. It's starting to look more like, you look at the series last year, and I was like, well, sorry, in season 1, and I was like, okay, yeah, it's the bridge of the Enterprise. If you tell me it is, like, Spock's station kind of looks like it's just new and more money and modern. That's fine.
Right. He's got the eye thing. And,
yeah, like I'm not one of these people that's like, well, how come it looks different? I was like, because fucking money. That's why. And it was shot in the 60s. That's why it looks different. That's like the whole Gorn thing doesn't bother me at all.
Sure.
Like, how did they become slow? It's because some dude in a fucking suit, he probably couldn't see and couldn't breathe. Like,
right.
And also, like, don't fucking punch Bill. Like, you know what I mean? Like, move slowly. Don't punch Bill. You'll get fired.
Oh.
Yeah. So just,
a lot of swiping. A lot of swiping.
And I mean, but there's a million ways around the whole Gorn.
Oh, sure.
Quotes issue. If it's a problem, there's 100 ways around that. But yeah, there's I noticed that towards the end of either that or I've just gotten used to it. But the set is really starting to look like TOS.
Yeah,
like the bridge. It's like it's got more of the red is more pronounced now, and like the lighting and stuff. It's like it looks starting to really look more like the TOS set. And I noticed that I think. Oh, there was a couple of episodes as well. Might have been the singing one where Uhuru gives Spock one of the little floppy disk things as well, and he puts it in the slot, and it's like, yes, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So, I like that. That, like you said, it was like it was a little nod to the old school without sort of having to be slaves to it. Like,
Yeah,
because it's like, because you didn't see them use this other stuff. Like, just because you saw them use this stuff in TOS doesn't mean they didn't have these other things, which our characters in Strange New Worlds just happen to be using. It's like for all we know, Sulu's already on the ship.
Right. There isn't anything that. Yeah. There's nothing
to say he isn't. It's like we just haven't seen him. It's a big ship. There's a lot of people on it. So. Things like that, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, he was here the whole time, yeah. Why does Khan know Chekhov?
Right.
It was a big ship. Probably walked past him. Like, just because we didn't see Chekhov in that episode, it's not found footage, like
right.
It's not let's watch Khan with a GoPro strapped to his head for an hour. It's like, well, he ran across him for some moment. In that episode, we just didn't see it, Yeah. So
absolutely. I have one little nitpick about this particular episode, which again I liked quite a lot, and I think this episode kind of starts to establish the pattern that we'll kind of see throughout the season. It's like you'll have like one type of episode, then you'll have another type of episode. The tone. From a certain point of view, one of the criticisms you could say about Star Trek Strange New World Season 2 is that the tone is aggressively uneven. I like the uneven tone because that's what episodic television is supposed to be. So I do think that later down the stretch, the swings get a little too much. But like, taking the adventure of the first episode, Broken Circle, and have this like tense, taut courtroom drama type thing. I think is a good move in the right direction. But like random nitpick, like so they're really trying to make Captain Batel happen. And so I mean I guess she's a recurring guest star, and
that's Pike's girlfriend.
That's Pike's girlfriend.
Yeah. Right,
so basically, so she's the one who comes over to Enterprise and says, "Well, hey, we need to take Una into custody."
That's right. Yeah.
So
I couldn't remember the character's name, but I know who you mean. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So Mrs. McMurray for you Letterkenny fans out there. Which incidentally, I saw this lady in all of season 1, and it wasn't until that courtroom episode, second episode in, where buddy of mine at work, he's like, well, that's Mrs. McMurray. I'm like, what are you talking about? I mean, because I watch Letterkenny. I like Letterkenny. I'm just like, oh my God, now I can't unsee it. It's acting, folks. People can inhabit two vastly different characters.
Yeah.
But why is she the prosecutor? That so she's another starship captain, and she just, I don't know, just happened to be the person that was tasked by Starfleet to bring her in. I mean, the answer to it is that, like, well, she's a recurring cast member. So, but I don't know. That one just kind of
another thing as well. They may have been trying to duplicate that measure of a man thing as well, where you had like Riker had to prosecute against Data.
Right.
They chose Riker as so you had Riker versus Picard in the courtroom setup, because Riker had to, what was his name? Maddox?
Something like that.
Is that his name? Anyway, the doctor guy.
Right.
The doctor scientist guy that was like, Data's not real. He's a fucking robot. It's just a piece of machinery that acts like a person. Which, like, I gotta say, he could be right. Like, he's not really sentient. It's just very.
He is fully functional.
Yeah, that's right. But he had to represent him. I'm going to say Maddox until I think it's.
It's Commander Bruce Maddox or Maddox.
There you go. Yeah, it's Maddox for you.
Yeah. I was going to say, just depending upon your regional pronunciation.
That's right.
He's not the multiple man. He's not Jamie Madrox, though. That's somebody else entirely.
Down here, the toilets flush the other way, and you say Maddox.
I love it.
Rhymes with addicts. So he had to represent Maddox, and Picard was the defense for Data. So maybe they were trying to do something like that as well. But then it does seem strange that, you would be like, let's just get the starship captain to, like, don't they have lawyers? Wouldn't they have their own
they have some space lawyers, because you have the evil Vulcan admiral, so you got that guy. So
now I'm blanking from.
Oh, the bald guy, the
sorry,
Vulcan
in this show,
fella,
of course, yeah.
Oh yeah, sorry. In this episode,
I was thinking of and so I don't know. It's strange, unless it's because maybe it is like a thing where. Well, it wasn't on the ship, so I was going to say, like, because it's on the ship, it's like you have like the drumhead situation and stuff like that. You make do with the crew you've got, kind of thing. And in this situation, we don't have lawyers and barristers and judges and whatever. So your captain has to become this, which means your first officer is that, and blah 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 blah. But they were on whatever planet they were on,
right?
They weren't on the ship, but I mean, like you said, real reason is. Character tension, that sort of thing. So.
Well, and that's the thing, because that puts tension between she and Pike.
Yeah,
and so which is fine. I mean, I'm all for that. I
did wonder that you were talking about pandering before. I do feel that, like, I don't know whether part of the reason I preferred season 2 to season 1 was maybe because it did feel a little bit less, like, quote unquote woke, which is weird, because Star Trek technically has always been like that, but not to the degree where like lately it felt like, and a lot of stuff like where it didn't feel progressive to me. It felt like more like pandering and more like finger pointing, like, look what we're doing. Do you see that? Yeah. Do you see our cast on Discovery? Like, there's only one white guy. There's only one white guy in the whole show, and he's gay. Like, there's no straight white men on our show. Did you see it? Do we get a badge? Aren't we awesome? Like, just fucking write your story. Like, I don't give a fuck. Like, I don't think Discovery's any better or any worse for the fact that there's no straight white man in the cast at all. Even like you go, oh, well, there's Saru. It's like, yeah, but it's a dude in a suit.
Yeah,
like
that doesn't count.
So, and now if you look at Strange New Worlds, if you don't count Spock, if you say, well, Spock's a Vulcan, all right, let's pretend he's not a white guy. All right. You got Pike, and that's it.
That's it.
You got second in command, whatever the fuck rank she is, number one.
Yeah.
Woman.
Actual X-Men.
That's right. And then you got, and then they got, Hammer was in charge. He was a guy, but again,
right.
Alien. All right. Replaced by a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got, and then the other, obviously Uhura.
Sure.
Woman and minority as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we're ticking off all the bingo cards, right. As well, if we're doing it that way. And then you got Lan and Ortegas. So not only are they women, but again, minorities.
Right. Right.
So, and that's cool. I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
But it did seem the first season did seem to be a little bit like, here's our hero shot of like, look at these women, the girls get it done. Like,
sure.
Like, who cares? I don't give a fuck. Just do it. Whereas season 2 just seemed to be like, Pike's off doing something. Okay. And number one's in charge. And she's like, Ortegas, I need this. Lan, I need that. Blah, blah, blah. Hey, Spock, have you got this happening yet? Yeah, hang on a sec. Like, Spock's following orders. Yeah, he's following orders because number one, apparently outranks him. Like, it's not like, oh, yeah, I'll step out of the way for the powerful female lead, Like,
right, yeah.
I don't give a fuck. Like,
yeah,
it's not enough. I'm not pointing the other way, but like, just do it. Don't do it and then go see what we did. Like, just do it.
And I think that's the difference is, in the messaging and the virtue signaling, like
Voyager, like Janeway was the captain and they just went, oh, fuck, we got to, Janeway's the captain. Okay. And all the media and stuff around it was like, the first Star Trek captain and blah, blah, blah. And all this stuff, the media and the promotion and all that stuff, they did all that. That's fine.
Yeah.
But the show, like Janeway just turns up and she's the captain. And there's one little instance at the start, I think it must be the first episode, yeah, because it's, I don't know if it's Paris, but Harry Kim is definitely there. So I'm assuming Paris is with him. And there's two of them. And they're like, she's like, okay, I want this done and blah, 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 blah. And they go, oh, yes, sir. And he goes, yes, ma'am. And she's like, yeah, I don't really like that either. And he's like, oh, what do I call you kind of thing? And she just says, yeah, I like captain.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay. So they just call her captain. A lot of times they're still like, I know Paris than that. They'll still say, yes, sir. But that's Paris being a smartass. But then it was just like, yeah, okay. Janeway's the captain. And off they went. And it was never like, let's head off to sector 487 and smash the patriarchy. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly. Like, second start to the right and smash the patriarchy.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of yeah.
Just do your show. And then the same show that had the female captain had 7 of 9.
Right.
So it was like, can you do both? Yes.
Yeah.
And some people were tuning in for one thing and some people were tuning in for the other. So I feel that season 2 of this show they just made the show. And it just happened to be the characters in charge of the characters who are doing and that's fine because they're good characters. Yeah.
Totally. And one of the things that like we were talking about, like, virtue signaling and stuff like that. One of the very subtle things that still remains in Strange New Worlds, kind of a carryover from from previous Star Treks, is that that sir is used as kind of like a gender neutral term. Everything is yes, sir. That kind of thing. And I hadn't noticed that until a conservative person that I know from work pointed that out to me. It's just like, oh yeah, it's like that's been gender neutral from the start. And at a time where Discovery has like a non-binary character and they make like like a multi-episode story arc out of it. It's fascinating that in the same stable of Star Trek production that nobody has come after those non-inclusive terms, that kind of thing. That's I'm gonna get off my soapbox before I get canceled. But like
it's funny though how different it's become, and that was the theory I was alluding to before.
Yeah,
is I think season 3 of Star Trek Picard really like woke. Not to use the term,
for lack of better term, sure.
Gave a wake up call or woke up a bunch of people to being like, oh, okay, maybe if we just do the show, people will like it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, just do your show. Have your diversity and have all your like progressiveness and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That's fine. No problem. Like we said, Star Trek's always done it. Mm-hmm. But just do it. If you do, it's like to me, it's like, I started the fire and then I put the fire out and then I went, hey guys, I put out the fire.
Yeah.
You don't get a medal for that. You know what I mean? So I just feel that, yeah. I did wonder, though, with the episode, ad Astra, whatever.
Ad Astra per Aspera.
Yeah, Ed Asner forever.
Yeah. Hey, it's on the poster.
That's right, yeah. I did wonder a little bit when the lawyer was going on and on about, like, because she's the same alien as number one and all this of like, our rights and this are rights and blah, blah. I wondered did some people, because I felt a little pandering to me, like a little bit of just like, I get it. It's just like, it did feel a little bit heavy handed, but then I wondered, were there a whole bunch of people back in 66 being like, I get it. His half of his face is black and his half of his face is white. And the other guy's face is white and they're black. Yeah. I get it. Fucking, it's not the same. Like, I wonder if there were people then doing that too.
Maybe.
Like,
I would love to see that, like a Twitter 1966 where it's just like all cap. We get it.
Yeah, I get it. The Riddler is the same as the other guy.
Yeah. Just not, racism is bad. I get it.
Yeah. So.
Oh man,
because you wonder, you never know. Like you remember, oh fuck, I get it. These fucking hippies and there,
Yeah, exactly.
But having said that, though, I did like that episode because I'm a big, I'm probably the only guy I know that likes, or that of my friends down here and all that I know that liked courtroom dramas. Mm-hmm. Like I used to watch The Practice when it was on and all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah.
So. And then we had Boston Legal, which was just the wacky version. They're like, oh, it's like The Practice, but it's the wacky version. And Shatner's in it. Oh, fuck.
I was going to say, I would assume that you were a Boston Legal fan.
See, I learned about Boston Legal, though, because I was watching The Practice. And Shatner guest stars in the last season of The Practice as Denny Crane, because he's Alan Shaw's lawyer when he gets fired from The Practice. And then it was like, we're making a spin-off with those characters. And I was like, oh, awesome. I'll watch that.
Yeah.
But, yeah, a lot of any legal sort of dramas I tend to watch. So,
Gotcha.
So this was good. It was Star Trek and kind of courtroom stuff, which was cool.
Yeah. And again, it feels like that classic meat and potatoes legal drama where it's got like twists and turns. And I just like the using like actual like textbooks and stuff like I thought that was really cool, and it will be interesting to see if we see this Nira character again, because like I don't know if the actress is like somebody who's somebody, because like the character is kind of presented in a way almost like it's a stunt cast, but you don't know what the stunt is. It's like, is that somebody I should know? You know, that, I mean, like, you know, if you bring in like, you know, Frank Gorshin to be the
that's right,
the dude with the
I didn't
on
know
the left
who,
side of his face.
I didn't know who was it, Megan the Stallion or whatever her name is. I didn't know that. I didn't know who that was until she turned up in She-Hulk. And everyone was just like, funny. This is ridiculous. Why is she twerking? I'm like, why? Who's that? And then like, oh, okay. Lizzo. I didn't know who Lizzo was until she turned up on Mandalorian. No idea.
Gotcha.
They did feel a bit like that of like, look who it is, kids. And you're like,
it's okay. I'm glad I'm not by myself on that, because it felt like it's like and guest starring. So I honestly I don't know if that person is somebody who's somebody you know, recognizable from something else, but like, I mean, again, I like the character. I like that. I like anybody who is brusque against Starfleet. I like when characters are there to kind of like take the piss out of the Federation a little bit, and that you know, to kind of as a reminder that the Federation and Starfleet is not as entirely virtuous as Gene Roddenberry would have us believe.
There's whole theories of how like the Federation is like a full-on like fascist dictatorship and things like that. It's just we've only ever seen it from the inside, so it appears to be rosy and happy. Whereas if you look at it from everyone else's point of view, like the Romulans or the Klingons or whatever, it really is like full-on like Nazi Germany type of thing. Like we make the rules, we'll decide the borders, we'll share technology with who we say we can. We'll interrupt the natural progression of this species or this planet if we want to, but we'll tell everyone that we don't. You know, like, that? Our best officer that we have broke all the rules and should be thrown in jail for the rest of his life for what he did. Let's demote him and give him a ship. Yeah. Take away another ship from a completely different captain and crew, reskin it as the ship that he blew up, and say, here you go. Thank you for your service. That's right. Yeah. Hey, try not to wreck any timelines on your way to the parking lot. After stealing it. Yeah. That's right. Yeah, theft of Federation property. Destruction of Federation property, the aforementioned USS Enterprise. Yep. Oh my gosh, that man's a criminal. Shatner's books hint at that a lot too. Yeah. Shatner's Kirk books. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff for the Federation that's like, we're doing this now, and it's like, oh, you shonky motherfuckers. Like there's some sneaky shit going on. I'll be interested to see if any of that is explored in the Section 31 movie that maybe they're still going to do. I think they're still going to do it. I mean, who knows now, but like, you know, they announced it, so I don't know. I'm surprised that they were like, we'll do it as a movie. I'll be like, just do it like a 6-episode show or something like that. Like it may 2 hours, and it's like, yeah, it may just come down to there was a time where Michelle Yeoh was somebody that you could just pick up on the cheap and put into your streaming series for a few episodes. Yeah, true. That lady is now an Academy Award winner. So, maybe a little harder to come by. So maybe in terms of like availability or cost or whatever's. But you know, we were talking about like the being willy-nilly with the Prime Directive. One of my favorite sequences in this episode is when they're cross-examining Admiral April, and I don't know this actor, but like, yeah. So and really the only thing that contradicts is the animated series, because he hasn't shown up in canon anywhere else. So it's like I like that that's a character that they're using. I love that they're blowing the dust off of like these, you know,
kind of dead end nowhere characters that like, it's like I've got a couple books on my shelf that like, Captain April shows up, that kind of thing, like, Strangers from the Sky or whatever the hell else.
And he's always on those lists. Like you always see the Enterprise lists, like the captains of the Enterprise. It's always April's always at the top. It's always Archer. It's always like Archer, April, Pike, Kirk, and then
and then everybody else.
Harriman. And then
I have visual aids.
Harriman had to be,
which sounds great as I'm getting tangled up.
That's who I was thinking. Garrett.
This would have been a lot better. This bit would have been a lot cooler if I had this stuff closer, but I didn't. I have a poster.
There you go.
With my various the glare is catching that very badly. So
Twitter,
yeah, exactly. So I picked this up from an artist named JJ Lendl, and he's been doing like all of the episode posters as well.
Cool.
I mean, nobody could see this since a podcast, but maybe I'll repost it. But like, I just it's a poster for Star Trek Legacy. And I really like the composition because it starts up at the top with the NX-01. In the 25th century, names mean almost everything. So obviously, it's a thing on Star Trek Legacy. But like, you start with Archer, then you show kind of side by side. You have Pike and April, then you have Spock, Kirk, Harriman, Rachel Garrett, of the Enterprise C.
Enterprise C, yep.
And then you get Picard, Riker, Worf for the C, D, and E respectively, and then poor Shelby, who gets to captain the Enterprise F before getting horrifically murdered by space millennials, by those Gen Z kids. Just gets phasered to death like immediately.
Yep. They're under control of the woke mind virus.
But I tell you what, though, the reason
is Jellicoe on there?
No, which technically he should be. Now it's funny because the artist put out a not an amendment, but like and Deckard, exactly.
I mean, I can understand why he's not.
Yeah, exactly. And so like he put out like a thing on Twitter that says, okay, we excluded this person, and this person. But the reason why I bought this poster, it's so funny. You're going to laugh at me so much. Down here in the corner, you probably can't see it because of the glare, but there's my dude, Captain Shaw down down in the very bottom corner in darkness, kind of obscured. Yeah. But like, I appreciate that inclusion because he is technically a captain of the Enterprise by proxy, I guess.
Yeah, because they turned the Titan into the Enterprise.
They turned the Titan into the Enterprise G. So, but
that's right. So he was captain of the ship, but just had a different name.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that counts. I think he gets in.
Yeah,
I mean, because I would let in Captain Liam Shaw before I would let in Will Decker. That dude